Hey guys, it's Dennis here with Revog Games. I'm joined by.
Joshua Weyers, all the way in South Africa.
Yeah, you seem to be feeling a lot better. We were gonna shoot that Mortal Kombat spoiler review, which we're still gonna do.
hmm
But you were feeling a little under the weather, and now you're looking a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually, you know what? While we're at it, I'm actually glad we did wait a few days on that because my thoughts on the movie changed. Still
hmm
enjoyed it, but I have a lot. My opinion is a lot more critical now
Okay,
because
cool.
I rewatched the original recently.
Oh, the original is a
Yeah,
classic.
it's a
So
classic, I know, but there were like something. We'll get into it. We'll get into
okay.
it in the review.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we're doing this a day early because tomorrow I'm going to go get my second dose of the COVID vaccine shot.
Hell yeah!
So I don't know what the side effects may be. I may be totally like out of it for a day or two. Who knows? But anyways, let's start off with some news. We don't have I don't know, a lot of stuff, but there is some big stuff. I mean, the biggest thing that I came across was The Last of Us Part 3 has a plot, but we don't know if it's actually going to be made or not. So Neil Druckmann, the creator, he basically said on a podcast that they had outlined a plot. Him and his co-writer Haley Gross have an outline for the story, but they're not sure, whether or not or when it would actually come out. And you haven't finished, right? Or played
No,
Last of Us Part 2?
no. I played it on a friend system. Didn't It's just really intense.
It is.
Like that was my takeaway. For me, it was just like it's one of those games where I have to be in the right frame of mind to play it. And when the game came out, I was not in the
Yeah.
right frame of mind to play that game. It was too heavy. 2020 was a rough year, man.
Yeah, I
But
think it
I
was
do want to get back into it. Yeah.
yeah, I think it was probably my second favorite game of the year last year, but after I finished I didn't touch it once since I finished. It's
Mhm.
one of those. I mean, it's the same thing with Red Dead Redemption 2, which is one of my favorite games of all time. After I played it, I played a little of the online stuff, but I never went back to play the story, and it's not because I don't think it's amazing. It's just one, it's very heavy. Not as heavy as
Mm.
Last of Us Part 3 or Part 2, but they're both heavy games. They're
Yeah.
big, long journeys. Like you really have to be like, okay, I'm going to commit. You can't sit down and be like, oh, I'm going to play a few hours. It's like, no, you're committing a month or two of time, every day playing and whatnot. And so, but anyways, part 3, I didn't really expect it. I thought part 2 was, if you play the game, you finish it, you kind of know it ends and it has a definitive ending, unlike the first game. The first game kind of leaves not so much on a cliffhanger, but it leaves it open for a lot of possibilities, which you kind of see the aftermath of that in part 2. With part 2, yes, there is some stuff you can still explore, which obviously they have written out, but you kind of have a closing of the chapter. You're closing on the characters, closing on the storyline. There's not that there isn't ways you can go. It's just you don't have to go anywhere. I guess that's what my takeaway from it is.
Do you think they were just a little maybe a little worried because obviously like there was a lot of criticism on The Last of Us 2 with which also, by the way, like even though I didn't finish the game or I didn't get to play that much of it, regardless of criticisms, it is a good game. You might not be happy where because all the criticisms that I have seen of it are all story based. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's no criticism of the actual game.
Mm-hmm.
No one's criticizing the game mechanics. It's a fantastic game. They're just criticizing where the story went. So I suppose there's definitely a bit of hesitance there, especially from Druckmann, because he's like, I mean, hell, I bet you in the back of his mind, he probably doesn't want to say this, but in the back of his mind, he's like, do these people deserve part 3? Do these people really deserve part 3? That's probably what he's thinking.
I mean, I haven't seen. I mean, I guess. I mean, with kind of geek nerd culture being so toxic nowadays, it's almost like it's almost like people are finding stuff to be upset about. So like, The Last of Us Part 2 was one. Obviously, Rise of Skywalker was one for Star Wars, and Last Jedi as well. Those both a double punch. The season 8 of Game of Thrones, and look, everything. Nothing is free from criticism or anything like that. But the extremes that people have taken, where they're like either threatening actors or directors or writers, and that kind of stuff just goes way over the line. You can not like something. There's nothing wrong with that. But in those cases that I'm talking about, things just got way crazy.
I don't think Picasso ever got death threats for his paintings. You know what I mean? Like it's a little obscene, man. It's art. It is what it is.
Yeah. So it kind of cool news to hear that they have an idea for a next Last of Us. Where are they still going to follow Ellie's storyline? Are they going to follow Abby's storyline? Are they still going to follow both? Will it be a brand new? Maybe it's just new characters, or maybe it's side characters from the first two that become main characters in part 3. I don't know, but there's a lot of things going on with the universe we have. And and Neil Druckmann was talking. It took kind of 7 years from the first game to the second game. So if a part 3 were to come out, it'd be a long time from now. And we have the. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, here's why it's important. Why they have a story. It's important for them to have part 3's story more so than the game, because I mean, this is kind of like a segue. Not so much. We're gonna talk about it, but
let's talk about it.
They can't just film the Last of Us TV show about part 1 and part 2 and then never show us part. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where I'm sure they have the ideas for part 3, and they're probably collaborating with the people who are working on the TV show. You know what I mean? Trying to it's one of those things where you have to, the directors of the TV show also have to know, where is this show going in the end. We only know what happened in The Last of Us Part 1. We only know what happened in The Last of Us Part 2. So they need to know where it's kind of going so that they can build towards that cinematically. You know what I mean?
That's a great point.
So it has that use as well.
That's a great point, because now we're in the same situation with Game of Thrones. Because Game of Thrones, the books came out, and they were like, I can't remember, 3 or 4 books into it, but they hadn't finished yet. And by the time the series, because George R. Martin writes very slow, and also and to be fair, that his books are very, very dense. They're very it's not like some little quick whatever read or whatever.
They're very Tolkien inspired as well in terms of how he writes them. Like, I don't get me wrong, I love Lord of the Rings, but the first time I read one of the books, I read like 4 pages about a leaf blowing through the wind, Dennis. I read 4 pages about a leaf they explained the scene in such detail in the book. I was like, I get it. Okay, a blade of grass flows through the wind, but they explain it like the light catches it as it glistens through. I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yes, that's why I do prefer the medium of a visual medium. Movies and television and whatnot. Video games also to that extent. But anyways, you make a great point. So they need some story, because remember, they're like, season 1 is going to be part 1. Well, it's like, okay, you're expecting this show, if successful, which we think it's going to be based on the name and the talent behind it, that it's going to go longer than 2 seasons. Because if you do part 1 in 1 season, let's say you could split up part 2 into 2 seasons, right? That's only 3 seasons. If you're a successful show, you're going to go beyond that. Then maybe you do need that part 3, and that's where that comes in. Now the question is, okay, let's say we don't see Last of Us until next year, right? 2022. Like I said, let's say season 1 is part 1 and season 2, season 3 are part 2. That's still not enough time for Last of Us Part 3 game to come out, at least according to their previous schedule. So that means they need some sort of story if they want to continue that. And that's kind of where this comes in. And then you got to figure out, well, is the game also going to have the same storyline, or are they going to take a different direction? Because, who knows? Because they have to deviate in some ways for the TV show, much like the Game of Thrones did as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. And then to segue into the next point, we're talking about the TV show. The reason why the TV show exists is because they originally tried to make a movie of The Last of Us, and it had been talked about for a long time. Neil Druckmann also in the same podcast mentioned that the reason why it fell apart was because the movie was too action focused, and
Yeah,
that
it seems like they wanted to Michael Bay the shit out of it, pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah. I mean, that's it's what studios do. They want that big bang. They don't want it's why, for example, you mentioned Mortal Kombat. Like some of my favorite parts of the recent 2021 was the opening 7, 8, 9, 10. Actually, it's probably 13 minutes of Mortal Kombat between the backstory between Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and it takes place in ancient times, and actually doesn't really have. I mean, it has like a little bit of the powers, but it's really more grounded in reality. Besides Sub-Zero's powers,
Yeah.
they're not going to make a full movie of that, even though I'd love it, is because they're not going to get their return because it needs to be a big spectacle, and they don't. They need the fatalities, and they need, these crazy characters doing crazy moves in settings that are like fantastical and magical and all that stuff. Where, yeah, for me, I would love to see a samurai-inspired Kurosawa kung fu influenced backstory
just that grain as well. Like the film grain. If you think about it, like the actual not the production value, but the film grain, the style of that first 18 minutes and the last 18 minutes, if you will, that first fight and that last fight between Scorpion and Sub-Zero, without any spoilers, it just felt different.
Mm-hmm.
The color looked different, the style looked different. It looked so much more cinematic. I don't know how else to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm kind of glad that they did do that in the movie, because it set it so far apart from the others. They were like, no, look, this fight is intense. Look at how much more cinematic it looks. Look at the film grain. Look at the coloring. You know what I mean? I liked it when they do that. But I would, like you said, I would love a whole movie like that. Yeah, that'd be sick.
But because studios are in the business of making money, and they also, for theaters, right? You're doing 2 hours now. They've kind of pushed that to 2.5 hours runtimes for movies. Mm-hmm. You're just not able to spend the time that you want on characters and character moments. And, The Last of Us is very character driven. And so Druckmann said that they want to go make this more like an indie film. And nowadays, people have been saying this for a while, and I've been saying it for a while, television is the new indie film. I mean, that's where originally indie movies ideas and budgets of indie movies have now gone. The drama where you're delving more into characters and plots and less spectacle. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is spectacle, but they usually build up to it, right? Like even in an expensive show like Game of Thrones, not counting like the last season or so, last 2 seasons where they had to do spectacle, like not every episode, but closer to that. Really, they would build up, and maybe in a season they have like 1 or 2 spectacle scenes. I mean, it's a function of budget as well. But then, guess what? They're focusing on the drama and the characters and all that stuff. And I think that's what The Last of Us is, and what I think television is just much more well suited for that, instead of like a 1-shot movie or whatever, or even a 2-shot movie.
Well, yeah, people wanted the movie because we didn't think we were going to get a series. You know what I mean? Now, obviously people are going to prefer a series. There's no way you can cram. Mortal Kombat's different. You know what I mean?
Yes, that is totally different.
It's very different. You know what I mean? But The Last of Us, you cannot cram that into a movie. Maybe a trilogy.
Yeah.
But you can't cram that into a movie. People would have been like it. It would have fell short somewhere. No matter how big the budget was, no matter how good it was, they would have had to cut a lot. They would have had to cut a lot of corners. So a lot of people wouldn't have been happy. Whereas I think with a series, people are gonna be happier, and especially with the amount of budget that most series have nowadays. TV used to have no budget. Now TV has huge budgets. Thanks to HBO.
Well, yeah, thanks to HBO, and now they're driving. And Netflix as well. They want to drive subscribers, so they need to invest money into these shows that are costing as much as movies now. But yeah, I just think The Last of Us story and characters all lend itself towards the television. I'm glad they went that route, to be honest. I don't think, like, for example, like Uncharted, that fits a movie, right? It's a, you know, like you mentioned, Mortal Kombat, that fits a movie. But Last of Us never really, it felt like a television series, you know? It felt more like that. So I'm happy to see it go that way.
Yeah, I think you're right though. Some games are just it's actually a fun and conversational topic if you think about it. What game would work well as a TV series as opposed to a movie? Like I think of God of War, I would want that in movie form. But then I think of like a lot of Rainbow Six games, I would want that in series form. You know what I mean? Like it's, I guess most RPGs you would also prefer it as a series. Well, not really. Like I would like Skyrim as a movie. I wouldn't want that as a series either. You know what I mean? Like but each like it's funny how you just know right off the bat, like if a game would be good as a movie or a show, you just know based off of the content. Death Stranding, amazing movie, maybe a good mini series, but not a good show. You know what I mean? They would either have to do a mini series or a movie, but I think it would do better as a movie.
All right, let's move on to our next subject, which has to do with movies, is the Oscars. So the Oscars happened this past Sunday. You know, it was a very interesting and special one because of the pandemic and everything. Did you watch it?
No.
Okay.
I didn't, but you know what? It's if it makes you guys feel any better, apparently nobody watched it. Like it was the lowest viewing.
It is, but people are making a bigger deal out of it than they should be. Obviously, we all knew it was going to be the least watched. I posted.
They didn't market it, you know what I mean?
Well, not only that, like I posted on social media. I watched it, by the way, but I posted on social media before it happened. I said, this is the first year in a very, very, very long time that I have not seen all or most of the Best Picture nominees. And it's because
I heard about No Man's Land the other day. Like I just heard about it like a few days ago. You know
I've been hearing about these movies. It's because of the pandemic in 2020. 2020, first of all, you didn't get to go to the movie theater. The last movie I saw was Sonic the Hedgehog back in February of 2020. The movies didn't get to go to the theater, so everything went to streaming or rental. But then some of those weren't like even like on streaming. Some of those were like, oh, you got to pay the $20, not like a $6 rental or something like that, just to rent to watch it instead of buying it. And then also just I wasn't in the mood to watch a lot of these movies. I mean, let's be frank. 2020 was a
draining year.
Yeah, it's to say the least. Even for someone like myself who probably didn't get, I mean, there was definitely some bad and terrible things that happened in my personal life, but I overall, probably compared to some other people, it wasn't as bad. And, you have to be in the mood to watch a lot of these movies, right? A lot of them are very heavy and they require a lot of attention. And so
they're very dramatic.
Yes.
And the themes are usually quite heavy. Like I've noticed that a lot of the movies that were nominated, most of them were just very like heavy. Like I'm sure they're great, but they're very like heavy movies, like heavy topics.
Look, when the Oscars decide to expand to the up to 10 Best Picture stuff, this was in response to The Dark Knight not being nominated that year and a lot of people thinking it deserved it. And then in future years, there were some movies that, that we felt like should have got nominated but didn't, like, but
I mean, I don't know. I have an issue with award shows in general just because of how it gets packaged. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, like, let's just say it must be really nice to be the Hollywood Foreign Press because you get a lot of free gifts.
But that's a different scenario compared to the Oscars because the way the Hollywood Foreign Press and Golden Globes is set up is like, it's very much, there's only a small amount of people and they can be easily influenced, where the Oscars is, obviously there are campaigns and stuff, but the influence the influence and stuff is like more like screenings and advertising and whatnot, and less because there's too many people in the academy that vote that you're not going to be able to sway them with, you know what I mean? Because there's just too many.
Man, I just want anime to be taken seriously. It used to. Like, I mean, look, Spirited Away, I believe that got an Oscar.
Yeah.
But I think the year the year that Your Name came out, it had decimated the box office. And the movie that won that year, I think, I can't remember what it was. It didn't even, the problem is with it didn't even get nominated. Like, the movie that beat it did win, but it was similar in terms of box office numbers. You know what I mean? Like, Your Name was the highest grossing Japanese animated movie of all time. How was my audio and video, by the way? I look frozen.
It froze once, but it's fine. I can still get it. I'm still seeing it.
As long as you can hear me. As long as you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
But anyways, so the Oscars this year, we knew it was going to be underwatched because there was no movies driving people to go see it. Like, that's usually the telecast is based on people that are fans of certain movies, right? Like, and what to go back to what I was talking about, like the Oscars expand that, but we haven't really seen too much of the mainstream movies get funneling in. We saw Black Panther was one, but you know, and this year in particular, because these big budget movies either had to debut on streaming or they just had to get pushed all together. We just didn't see any of these big tentpole movies that captured people's imaginations and whatnot. So not that it was a bad year for movies, it was just very undermarketed. People had other stuff they're doing, and you know, that's why Netflix and HBO Max and all this stuff got like a bigger pushes. Video games in general just got a bigger attention because people were like, oh, I'm at home. What should I do at home? Well, I will watch Netflix. I'll watch HBO Max, or I'll play some video games, right? There's no movie theater. And then with these movies, watching them at home, I'll have to say, watching a movie versus a television show it's weird. It feels like much more of an investment than television, even though television, let's say a season of television is 10 episodes and each one's an hour each, right? That's 10 hours versus 2 hours, right? So it seems like it's a lot more. But what happens is you watch one episode, and if you're hooked, you already know the characters, you already know the story, you know all that stuff, and you want to see what happens next, so you watch the next one and the next one and the next one. With movies, it's your 2 hours, you're with the characters, and then it ends. And then when you start a new movie, it's a completely different set of characters and situations and all that stuff. So it's just not as easy to like get into, especially at home where there's a lot of distractions, especially now. Anyways,
some movies are just not meant for the TV, you know, which is just sad. Like, I believe it was Scorsese who said it's like as awesome as Netflix is, a kind of butchered film, like actual film, because you cannot get this where we are right now with technology. You still cannot get the same experience from a TV that you do from a cinema in terms of film. You know what I mean? Like, if you're watching something in 35 millimeter at a theater, that's completely different from what it would be watching something on your TV. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, for me, to be honest, the projection doesn't matter to me. To me, it's more about the theatrical experience of like having the large screen and sitting in a dark theater and everyone's paying attention. There's a bunch of different factors into that theatrical experience. I mean, I know Tarantino's big on the 35 millimeter projection and whatnot, but for me, it's like, look, if the movie's good, the movie's good. But I do appreciate the theatrical experience because I think that is the best way to watch a movie with other people that are like either oohing and eyeing or crying or laughing or whatever with you, and then also your attention is much more focused, right? Because you can't be loud, you can't be on your phone, you have to focus, and so you get more of an intense experience from that, right?
Yeah.
Versus watching a television screen at home with
going into the news real quick.
Yeah.
I think we may have mentioned it last week that it was nominated, or I don't know if we actually spoke about. I think we spoke about how it was nominated. So now I know we definitely brought it up last week. I don't know if the news had. I think the news had just broke. We may have mentioned it loosely that they had won. But now like the news is like completely out. You know, Respawn won.
Yeah,
I think we did
because
because we spoke about you having played the Medal of Honor game that this was attached to.
yeah,
But
but it
but
hadn't
the news
won
had
yet
just
though.
broken.
It
Yeah,
hadn't
haven't
won
won
yet.
yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, what does all this Oscar talk have to do with everything? Is that the World War II documentary Colette won Best Documentary Short Subject at the Oscars, and during the speech, you hear them thank Electronic Arts, EA, and Respawn. You know, because this documentary was part of the VR title Medal of Honor Above and Beyond. I talked about how I hadn't played it yet because of the pricing or whatever. But this was, you know, you can actually watch this documentary. You don't need the game. You can actually just go watch it for free. There's places online that you can go see it. So it's just very interesting to see that not so much a game one, you know, but it has ties to video games, you know. So what do you think about that? You didn't watch the Oscars. For me, it was like I was watching it and she's like, I want to thank Electronic Arts and Respawn. I'm like, Respawn?
And you were like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, dude, I think the more video games look, video games as is already popular culture. Video games is already mainstream, but this is just getting it even more mainstream. Like it's pushing the boundaries even more, which I'm happy about. You know what I mean? Hopefully, in the future, there is room for like an Oscar for video game because look,
I hope so.
A lot of mocap. A lot of games are mocapped. A lot of the acting is real. Like it's real acting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like hopefully that can get taken. Like I've seen some phenomenal like mocap actors that are much better than TV actors. You know what I mean? So hopefully like it can get taken seriously in that regards. You know?
I mean, to be real, good.
If we're adding video games to the Olympics, why can't we add it to the Oscars, man?
To be realistic, I don't foresee any of kind of like the mocap and even, to be honest, any of the acting stuff to go into those categories, unfortunately, just because of how, you know, old school the Oscars are. But
hopefully the screenwriting, you know, at least the storyboarding and stuff.
What I can see, though, is like a equivalent of, you know, best animated film and having best video game of the year. Yeah. Like having an Oscar for that. I could see that happening because then it's like, okay, we're not going to put, because you know, the Oscars, like I said, are old school and very strange.
I suppose they would have to make it a lot more tight as well if you think about it, because it can't just be best video game, because then there's so many FPS games where there's no story, no cinematic experience.
No, but that's what I'm saying. They would only call it best video game, and they would only nominate and give an Oscar to the best game, irregardless of genre or whatever. Yeah. So, like, I think
I feel like that complicates it, though.
No, I think it simplifies it for them, at least. For them, they're just looking. Look, let's be frank. The Oscars are not going to. Like Doom Eternal, even though it's a fantastic game, is not going to be winning the quote-unquote future Oscar for video games. What it's going to be is The Last of Us. It's going to be maybe a Ghost of Tsushima, Half-Life X, God of War, Red Dead Redemption 2. It's going to be those
Assassin's
games.
Creed even, you know what I mean? Yeah,
it's going to be those type of games that would be winning this.
It's not going to be Fortnite.
No, it's not. It's
not going to be Counter-Strike.
Because remember, the Oscars are focused on storytelling, so they're not really. Not to say they don't want to. They wouldn't appreciate. Look, I'm talking hypotheticals here, but I'm going through what the Oscar mindset is. They're not as focused on the gameplay stuff, right? So like that's why you said like a Fortnite or a Apex Legends or Among Us is never would win this quote unquote Oscar for best video game. They're looking for that storytelling cinematic experience and you know,
I think it's going to take a while, like you said, considering how long it took them. I mean, it took years for the Oscars to start nominating VFX artists. I still don't actually know. Are VFX artists nominated in the Oscars?
Yeah,
because they play I remember there was a huge push for it, like in the 2000s, where they were complaining. They were like, we bust our balls for these movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like we deserve our own category. Like VFX it's difficult, whether it's practical or digital, we should be awarded, and they had to fight hard for it to happen. But then again, I suppose actually now moving forward, the Oscars, it seems like the Oscars might have a fight for relevance in the future. You know what I mean? And I believe that, yeah, we might see this video gaming coming into the Oscars sooner than later because of relevance. It needs to get more relevance,
Yeah, I agree that a lot of younger people are not watching it because they're not into the movie. One, they're not into the movies that are being nominated. Two, they're distracted by other stuff like video games
MCU.
and
everything. They're just gonna watch the Marvel movies,
Yeah.
The Oscars, sure, they will nominate a Marvel movie, but most people, they just stick to those superhero movies. It's just like nothing wrong with that, to each their own. But you said it, like you're gonna have like no. The average Joe doesn't watch Wes Anderson movies. You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah.
What's interesting though is Chloe Zhao, who won for Best Director in her picture. No Man Land won for Best Picture, and she won for Best Director. She directed a Marvel movie, The Eternals, and that is coming out, I think, either end of this year or early next year.
I didn't actually add it to the list, but supposedly Kevin Feige was praising her on her use of practical locations for the filming of the Eternals. Kevin Feige was praising her, saying like she did a fantastic job on locations, like using actual real locations, and less CGI and stuff.
Yeah. But anyways, to wrap that up and go into the next one, I would just say, the Oscars were not well watched, but it was expected, and like a lot of people weren't into watching these type of movies this past year, and understandably so, including myself, I love the Oscars. I love watching it every year. I did like the different look it had this year. I don't know if you saw, but they did it at the Union train station, Grand Central Station, downtown, and it was a very small, intimate.
Bad stuff about
yes,
we're not a political channel, so we're not going to talk about
yes, I heard about about that stuff, but in terms of like the actual way that they shot it, I thought it was kind of cool. It was more small, more intimate.
And Union Station's awesome as well, I love Union Station.
But anyways, all right, let's move on to the next thing. Returnal, which is a PS5 exclusive third-person shooter, is coming out actually tomorrow, Friday. Depends on when you're watching or listening to this.
I'm not going to be able to play this, man.
And the reviews have started to come in, and they're all been pretty positive. They say, this is a genre that I really, have only recently kind of become aware of, which is roguelike, where it's kind of procedurally generated environments and whatnot.
It's been my favorite genre for 3 years. Hades was roguelike, by the way.
Yes.
We spoke a lot about Hades.
Yeah.
Hades was a roguelike game. Roguelike games are fantastic. They're basically replayability. You're basically doing infinite runs, and each run is different with a roguelike. Essentially, that's the way it works. Like Binding of Isaac, Hades, all these games, they focus around the same thing of like you're doing a run, and each time you're picking up different weapons and different abilities, and they work together differently. Similar, like we'll talk about it. I want to, after you speak about this, but this game mostly reminds me of Risk of Rain 2, which is also a roguelike game, but very similar. But we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah, I mean the genre itself, I'm not too familiar with. I don't even know if any games I've played would be considered roguelike. But anyways, this is an exclusive to PS5. It looks great. We'd heard about it on some State of Play stuff that Sony had done before last year. They had a launch trailer with it. It looks cool. It seems to have a cool story behind it. The one thing, I guess, when I was listening to the reviews and reading the reviews about like that, maybe I don't have a PS5, so it's kind of moot at this point. But the one thing that kind of might turn me off is the whole not being able to save thing, and like having to. I was listening to the IGN review and saying like, okay, well the runs are pretty long, they're not short, and that literally like they'd have to like pause the game and put the PS5 like in sleep mode or whatever, and you couldn't actually like turn it off or restart it or or load up some other app or whatever, because then you would lose everything that you were doing on that run and then have to start all over, And so
I'm curious as to what they mean by too long, because in my opinion, the average roguelike game, a good run is going to last you 40 minutes to an hour per run, like per try.
I'm guessing it's longer. I'm guessing a run is longer.
Yeah. Like I know on Risk of Rain, I constantly make it to like the 50-minute mark. Same with Hades, I always make it to like the 50-minute mark. Which is why I only usually have it in me to do one, maybe two runs and then take a break,
I'm assuming that it's probably closer to 2 hours, I'm guessing. Or maybe 3. I don't know.
Yeah, depending on how good you do, I guess. Because if you die in 5 minutes, then that's your run,
Yeah, of course. But I'm talking about to complete, a run. I guess that was one of the criticisms of the game. It was a bit too long. So, anyways, good reviews. This is the type of games that we're expecting from the next gen, right? That like, hey, this is an exclusive to this platform. You're not going to be able to play it, on any other system, and it takes advantage of the new hardware. So it's like, okay, cool. This game alone is not going to make me run out and buy a PS5, but it's definitely, stacking up, as soon as I see, okay, they got Spider-Man Miles Morales, which they had a PS4 version, but, it'd be nice to play the PS5 version instead. They got this game, and then whatever the next exclusive is going to be, especially like God of War. Then I'll be like, oh man, they got these Ghost of Tsushima 2. Then I'll be like, okay, now it's time to get a PS5. So, anyways, I think this is.
We're going to talk about Sony later as well, because I got I've got an article about them pushing first party and third party studios.
Yeah.
A lot of money that they're dipping in. I will say, Dennis, my biggest takeaway from this is that this is not what I was expecting. First of all, you and we watched when the trailer dropped for this. I think it was a year ago. Everybody was like, wow, it looks beautiful, but what the hell is it about? You know what I mean? It was just a cinematic. Nobody knew what the hell the game was about. I thought it was going to be some like rich story, slow-paced kind of like Death Stranding type game. And I look at the gameplay and it is fast, bro. It is fast-paced, man.
Yes.
Dennis, I want to play this. I want to play this so fucking bad. I love roguelike games. I will spend hours upon hours playing roguelike games. They're so... The best thing about roguelike games, like I said, is replayability. Even when you beat the game and you're done with the game, you're still gonna be playing like it's like playing golf. If you finish the golf track, like the golf course, you're not gonna never go back. You know what I mean? You're gonna keep playing golf. And that's what I like about these types of games. It's fast, not what I was expecting whatsoever. I truly was thinking that this was gonna be some kind of slow-paced, story-rich, like action RPG.
That's kind of more up my alley.
Yeah, but this is like straight. Like, not only is this roguelike, but it's part bullet hell. I don't know if you know what the bullet hell genre is. It's like Asteroid. You ever play the arcade game Asteroids? It's like that, but on crack.
Of course.
Where it's just you're just getting bombarded with bullets, and most of the time you're just spending dodging waves of bullets. So it's like part bullet hell, part roguelike. And it is fast paced. So it's also one of those things where I can understand how, like, if a good run does go on for longer than an hour, I can understand how that can be too much because it's really fast paced. Yeah. A lot of roguelikes, like the closest thing I can relate this to is Risk of Rain 2. That's fast paced, but and depending on how many powers you pick up and depending on how you play, you can be surrounded by abilities. You can lag. Sometimes there's a lot of stuff on screen, but even then, that looks less so compared to this. This looks like it could like really like maybe the reason why it's on a PS5 is because it'll obviously lag any other system. It's like there's a lot of resources going around. The particles look great. Like, can we just talk about how beautiful the particles look?
Yeah.
Like the game is stunning. Like,
no, it looks great.
Not what I was expecting whatsoever. And the game's coming out tomorrow, which is if you have a PS5, get it. What else are you using your PS5 for? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Go get this game, man.
Okay, so I'm reading right here. The average run runs 90 minutes plus, and they said there's no way to save. There's no way to save midway, and
it defeats the purpose if you save. It would defeat the entire genre. It wouldn't be a roguelike if you could save.
But they said they wish the PS5 had Xbox Quick Resume feature. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Or at the very least, I suppose if their runs are that long, they should at least
that's a
allow
long run.
they should at least allow safe zones. You know what I mean? Where you can like a zone for you to
Uh-huh.
stand in where you don't have to worry about getting killed and you can just stand there and breathe for a few minutes. You know what I mean? I think who knows if this is a problem that persists, I believe that that would be the easiest way to implement it. You know what I mean? Like at least like there are other games where most roguelikes is you're going from I don't know specifically how this game's going to do it, but most roguelikes is it'll be like you'll go from room to room, or like Risk of Rain is you'll go from world to world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there are like even though it's a run, you're still going through levels, progressing, and like there's at least like a break in between levels, loading or something for you to breathe. You know,
Mhm.
where it looks like this is just fluid, 90 minutes of pure action. Like
Mhm.
I think that would be wise to at least or who knows, you know, moving forward with roguelikes, games like this can have constant DLCs because they're not going to throw they're going to throw in new bosses, new enemies, new swarms of like people to defeat, new abilities, new weapons, like that's the nice thing about roguelikes is that there's an endless possibility of how much you can keep bringing into the game. You can always pump in new things. So chances are they'll probably in like add items in game, like in game items that you can use to like take a 5 minute break or something, you know, or hopefully they'll add a safe zone. But I think this game's gonna sell well. It's not gonna sell amazingly because let's be honest, it's an exclusive on the PS5.
It's a new
And
IP.
even
It's a new
it's a new
IP.
IP. I think it
It's
has
it's
a lot of
not it's
traction.
it's not from a studio that's like super well
Mhm.
known. You
Well
know.
known, yeah. But it's also like I mean, look, if you consider the PS5 within its first year has well, where it is right now, the PS5 has outperformed the PS4 in terms of sales.
Yes.
I believe, right? At least in terms of time. Like we're not
Yes.
talking overall. We're talking about since launch,
Yeah.
right?
It
It
has.
has beaten. So there are a lot of people out there with PS5s. I don't know where they are, but there are a lot of
I don't
people out there with
know.
PS5s.
Yeah, I haven't met a single person that has a PS5,
Yeah,
and then
no, neither.
and also I don't know,
Man.
and I also don't know what they're
Jealous.
doing with it other than playing a few games.
There's a few games that like apparently is very different, like upscaled and like fun to play. Like there's one or two, but like you
Yeah.
said, they've probably just been collecting dust since Miles Morales, you know.
Yeah.
But this looks like it's going to push the console to its limits as well in terms, like just with all those particle effects going around, like it's going to push this game to its limits. Like when there's like 100 enemies around you and there's just a shit ton of particles, it's really
They
going to be
they
pushing the
said that
hardware to its
that
limits.
one of the best things about the game is that it runs 4K 60 solid.
Wow,
Yeah.
even with all that happening on the screen, that's
Uh huh.
intense.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. It's yeah, everybody, all the reviews I've seen, even from like smaller developers who have been able to get a developer code or have been able to get the game early, um, everybody's saying good stuff. And these are from like reviewers I know and trust.
Hmm.
There's a lot of reviewers I don't really trust because here's the thing: when you work in reviewing games, you know, I
Hmm.
know, you want to be nice. They give you the embargo, they give you the game. You want to do a nice review. Like you want to be non-biased, but at the same time, you want them to keep sending you games so you can keep reviewing it. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of that. And luckily, the reviewers I watch, they're completely impartial. Like they don't care if the company sends them the game or not. Like they're like, well, I'll buy it and review it if they don't send it to me. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
And everybody, it just seems positive. It seems like a really good, fun-paced roguelike game. It oddly enough, Dennis, it seems like the kind of game that would work really well on PC, like with mouse and keyboard.
Hmm.
It really seems like the kind of game that would work great with mouse and keyboard.
Well, with Sony's track record, it will be on PC in about like 3-4 years.
5, 6 years if I'm
Yeah.
lucky, man.
Yeah. So.
Unless it goes on the PS Now, you know,
Yeah.
which I doubt.
So, all right. Let's move on. We talked about this movie, Mortal Kombat. It debuted at the box office last week. You know, besides it debuting on HBO Max, it was in theaters and it made 22.5 million, narrowly defeating Demon Slayer. You know,
Which was such a good movie. I'm sorry. I know we're a gaming channel, but anime is my life, Dennis, and that Demon Slayer movie was hype. Okay, it was sick.
mhm.
Like credit where credit is due.
Yeah, it's interesting to see like that high of a box office debut for Demon Slayer because, you know, it's the pandemic. You know, there's not, you know,
It was
there's
actually because of the pandemic. It's a huge opportunity like, dude, the movie, it was in cinemas here in South Africa. That's unheard of. I believe because of the pandemic, a lot of cinemas globally have a limited choice into what they can buy and show to their
Mm-hmm.
audiences. You know what I mean? Because obviously the cinemas themselves, they have to buy the movies, they have to buy the rights to film to show the movie. You know what I mean? And there weren't for a lot of people there weren't a lot of choices, or they took a big financial hit. Not a lot of cinemas can afford to be buying the rights to big movies. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it was a no-brainer for a lot of cinemas to say yes, let's do the anime movie. We can afford that. And that did definitely boost the sales. Because let's be honest, if it wasn't for COVID, I don't think that nearly as many cinemas would have played this movie.
It's interesting, but
I
people
think
went
that actually
though. But
might have been
people went.
happening.
That's
Yeah.
the thing. Is like, you know,
Dude,
you can put
the theaters
you.
are packed here. Like I've never seen the theaters packed here since last year, but the theaters were packed here, dude,
I think in a
for an anime movie.
I think here in Los Angeles, at least, probably in a couple months. I think movie theaters are open now, but they all have there's limitations in terms of like how many people can sit where and et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
In about 2 months, we will be a lot better here with COVID. So I have a feeling that's when things are going to start ramping up for movie theaters here. But anyways, it was cool to see. Like you can't really judge these like normally you see 22.5 million, you're like, oh my god, that's not that much, but it's like in the pandemic time, it's actually quite a lot. Godzilla made 31 its opening weekend, so it's it's just a sign that things are starting to get semi back to normal. And that's nice. All right, let's move on to this is my last one. I know you have a bunch of stuff we're going to talk about as well. This was just more funny than anything.
Yeah, this is funny news. This is meme news, man.
Yeah, Google Stadia apparently was touting that they finally brought a search bar to Google Stadia,
The
which
company most famously known for being a search engine.
yes,
Finally added a search bar.
makes all their money from searching. Finally put one in Google Stadia, which is kind of hilarious. This Google, I'm telling you. You got a lot of players in this realm. You've got Google Stadia, you got Amazon Luna, you have even Apple has their own Apple Arcade or whatever, PS Now, and Game Pass, Xbox Game Pass. Man, it's eventually, and this is going to happen with the streaming services. It's just not happening yet. They're going to get consolidated. Like eventually, there's going to be 2 or 3 winners. You know what I mean? Because it's just not going to be sustainable. Eventually, some of these, and Google Stadia looks like it may be one of those that.
I mean, look, EA Play is already fused with Game Pass. You know what I mean?
Because they're like,
Like, we're gonna see
I
a
can
lot
make
more
more money
happening.
that way. So
Mm.
yeah,
No, for sure, we're gonna see a lot more of that happening.
yeah, and so eventually, there's not going to be. Right now, there's like a bazillion streaming services, right? Like. I'm subscribed to like 5 or 6 of them, but eventually the smaller ones are going to have to die off because people aren't going to be able to pay the amount of money for their particular streaming service. They're just going to have to start combining with stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right, that was my last thing. I know you have a bunch of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
What's the biggest one?
I got one big story. The rest are fairly small to talk
Okay.
about. The biggest story here is that matching Epic, Microsoft is going to slash its prices down to 12%. So they only take a 12% stake from developers. Like matching Epic, which is great. Kind of like a slap in the face to Steam, because Steam still takes 30% they still take 30% of your revenue. And I didn't even know this, but supposedly the more you sell on Steam, the less they take. So like,
Yeah, but you have to sell a lot though.
Like even if you sell 50 million copies, they'll reduce it to 20%, which is still taking more than Epic or Microsoft would. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it's getting to a point now. Like, look, if Microsoft is matching Epic in terms of taking that percentage, I'm wondering, will this affect Steam? Do you think Steam will drop its prices? Because now not only do developers have the option to go to Epic, they also have the option to go straight to Microsoft, which is big. Microsoft's huge. You know what I mean?
It is,
Like,
but the problem is what's the percentage of people actually buying from the actual store, though? That's the thing.
the price. I will say that the numbers have gone up since the Game Pass because you have to use the Microsoft Store for a lot of things, even just whenever your Game Pass encounters a problem, and because it's in
Yes.
beta sorry, Game Pass for PC,
Yeah.
it's in beta, so it encounters problems a lot. So a lot of the time, you actually have to work through the Microsoft Store,
Yes.
and which I'm not too sure if they meant to do that or not, but the Microsoft Store has been getting more traction recently.
Yeah.
Um, don't know about sales though, but I think that this is going to look. This is going to get developers to want to get their games on there,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to want to put their games on the Microsoft Store and on the Epic Games Store, and they're not going to want to put it on Steam. If your game is on the Microsoft Store and it's nowhere else, you're going to go to the Microsoft Store. You know, at least that. Well, then again, that's what Epic thought was going to happen, and look, it worked for a while, but now Epic's users are definitely declining. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, I think it's very helpful. I do think there needs to be competitors to Steam just so that, developers can
Mm.
get a better, deal out of stuff and it's not so much a monopoly. I just, you know, we'll
Yeah. Well,
see.
tying into that as well, they asked a question at the GDC State of Game Industry. There was a poll that said, "What do you think is a justifiable amount of your game's revenue for digital storefronts?" And only 7% of people responded saying that 30% was fair, which means obviously 93% of people think that Steam taking 30% is crazy. You
No,
know what I
it's
mean?
it's too much. It's too much.
It is way too much. A 30-70 split is crazy, dude. Like, look, even if you like, I think we've spoken about this before. Even if they dropped it to a 20% stake, that's still huge for Steam. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, look, it's not as good as it's going to be. It's not as good as Epic or Microsoft, but that'll help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if you take 20% of, like, that's still a big chunk of money, Steam. You don't need 30%.
Well, I
If
mean,
you drop that,
honestly, for small developers or indie developers, that could make or break a game. You know what I
that
mean?
extra 10% for them could exactly, it can make or break like their studio, especially if they, like, I think about, look, Valheim, right? That was a studio of, I think, 4 people. They sold 2 million copies of the game, and then they wanted to they wanted to expand. Now,
Mm-hmm.
clearly, expansion would have gone a lot easier if they had 80% of their revenue instead of 70% of their revenue. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, or more. But the point is, they would have been able to build offices. They would have been able to expand quicker. They would have been able to pull out content quicker, because Valheim is still an incredibly like popular game. But I guarantee you that they would have had more gain if they were able to expand quicker and bring out more updates quicker. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Because even right now, the player base is slowly falling off. It's still pretty big, but it's slowly falling off because they're not updating it enough. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they would have been able to update it more had they gotten more of the revenue. But
Mm-hmm.
Steam took 30% of that.
Yeah. So.
Um, let's see. Moving forward, this is like actually, it's interesting. Unfortunately, we are filming the podcast a day early. If we were filming the podcast on time, we would probably have covered this. But I believe, Dennis, what's the time right now by you?
It is 2 p.m. You're talking about State of Play. State of Play is happening
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, it just started. So by the time this is uploaded, State of Play will be out. So be sure to check out the State of Play. Um, but yeah, there's not much to talk. Like, I just wanted to mention it. The State of Play is out right now. I have a feeling maybe you and I can maybe do a review in all right, we can maybe post our thoughts in like 2 days from now. Just post like a video,
Mm-hmm.
or we'll see how you feel after your
Yeah,
vaccination.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna be watching it after this, regardless. I'm gonna watch it. But yeah, State of Play is out. I could talk about like what to expect. Obviously, we're gonna see a lot of things like the Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart game. Um, they're gonna be talking about that. There's a couple things to focus on, but we'll see if we can do a video about it once you're feeling a bit better.
Yeah.
And then also they've well, we know E3 is going to be digital. They just announced the exact times. I believe it's going to be from June 12th to June 15th. And they've announced the hosts, which is going to be Greg Miller, um, Jackie Jing. I don't know if I think I'm pronouncing that right. And then Alex Golden Boy Mendez, who's an esports commentator. Um, but yeah, that's not that big of news. But if you guys are interested, E3 is going to be from June 12th to June 15th. Moving on from that, this is referring to Sony, what I was going to say. So Sony is aggressively investing in first-party studios and third-party exclusives. I think this comes following after they did say, I think we spoke about it last week, where they said that there's going to be a lot more exclusives for the PS5 than we thought there was going to be. So I think this follows that. Yeah, they're just pushing hard on they're just pushing hard. What's it? We plan to increase development personnel and other costs in our in-house studios by approximately 183 million USD year on year. I'm not too sure what year on year means. Does that mean each year 183 million?
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a big chunk each year. Wow. As we further strengthen our in-house software. So, I believe. Oh yes. Hold on. I don't want to misspeak this because this is actually kind of they are. Yeah. Here we go. Is it no to the company's part? Oh yes, the company they partnered with the creator of Assassin's Creed, Jade Raymond, his new studio Haven. So they're going to be creating a whole brand new IP for PlayStation, coming from the creators of Assassin's Creed. So that's exciting. That's also looking good to look forward to.
It makes sense because I'll be honest with you. You know, even looking at right now, I'm looking at my Xbox app on my PC. I have Game Pass Ultimate, so you know I get EA Play and I get the PC games and I get the Xbox games or whatever. I mean, this deal is just way too good. I mean, it's just the only way that Sony can combat that is to get exclusives that Xbox cannot. Because I'm looking at this like I can play Jedi Fallen Order on here. And this is just the PC one. I can play Mass Effect 1, 2, 3, Andromeda. I can play Star Wars Squadrons. I can play the Halo games. I can play the Fallout game, Fallout 4, Fallout 76. I mean, that's just I'm just talking like just off the top of my head of the stuff that you can play on here. You play FIFA 15, FIFA 18. It's just there's too much good stuff.
It's huge. Yeah, it's honestly huge, man. I mean,
Control is on there.
This is actually not something this isn't something that I added into the list. But Xbox users have found a way because I believe the Xbox has the Edge Explorer in it, the Microsoft Edge Explorer. Yeah. So gamers have found a way to stream PC games onto their Xbox through the Microsoft Edge Explorer. Now, obviously, this isn't going to be around for long because Microsoft has got xCloud, so they're going to completely cut this out. Because I think this is using Steam Play or something, so you can stream your Steam games through your Xbox, and you can play using a mouse and keyboard. So you can straight up play like Age of Empires on your Xbox if you wanted to. You know what I mean? How long this is going to be available for, I'm not too sure because I'm sure, like I said, Xbox is not going to allow this to happen because they have their own streaming service coming out or like that they're working on. But like that said, also moving forward, if they can get PC games onto the like a lot of like RTS games and like that, if they can get that onto the Xbox, that's also a huge win for them. You know what I mean? And I don't see Sony doing that. So they have to fight with these exclusives. They have to really fight hard with these exclusives, man.
Yeah, if it looks like, from, what we saw with that video or the PlayStation Video Plus Pass or Plus Video Pass or whatever, it doesn't look like they're going to try. I mean, they're going to try and compete, but they're not going to do the day one exclusive titles on PS Plus or whatever. And they're trying to supplement it with videos and movies and TV shows. And we talked about that last week. We were like, that's just not enough. The only thing they can do is get exclusive games that you just can't get on the Xbox, and therefore you have to get a PS5, whether subscription based or not. Because right now, as far as deals go, the Xbox is just even without the exclusive games on the Xbox Series X, it's still a fantastic deal.
It's just the most use for it. Like you'd use it more than you would use a PS5. Actually, you might want to flick through this. This I thought was awesome. I never heard about this game before. There's a game called Lost Soul, and it's going to be coming to the PS5. Apparently, it was announced or spoken about back in 2016, but it was only one developer. And this reminds me a lot of Wukong. Like, I think they're doing a similar approach to the Wukong approach, which is they're like, look at how amazing this game is. We need a level designer.
Yeah.
We need a level designer. Help. Yeah. Which is great. Dude, this game the game needs polish. There's a couple things that I saw faults with, but this game looks fun and it looks sick and it's beautiful. It's Chinese as well.
Mhm.
So also very similar to Wukong. The voice actors are Chinese. The entire
They said the
game takes
Devil May
place.
Cry composer, 5 composer, Cody
Yeah.
Matthew Johnson, is writing music for the game.
And from what I could tell, I watched the first couple of minutes. I was like, oh, this is such a cool fantasy game. And then I saw a spaceship, and I was like, wait, now it's a fantasy sci-fi. It's like they've blended fantasy, martial arts, sci-fi. Well, not martial arts, 'cause it's more like wushu. You know what I mean? Like some of the combat that they're doing, less so martial arts. And what I love is that your sword is a dragon that speaks to you. It's literally like there's a dragon. It's your dragon, but it's also your sword. And there was like a moment. There's a bit of platforming I saw. The platforming doesn't look sharp. I think that's why they need a level
Mhm.
designer. It seems like that's where they're falling short. The combat looks great. The game looks visually beautiful. The platforming is falling short. Like the jumping animation looks horrible.
Yeah,
Because you got to keep in mind
I'm watching it right
there's
now.
a small thing. It's bad, but there's a point in time where I think like the guy falls onto the ground. He starts like surfing, and I was like, that's not a mechanic I was expecting. He's like surfing like on his dragon or something. A lot. It looks fun. Like it looks fun. I don't think it's gonna be like, look, the Wukong game looks sick. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. Like that's gonna do much better than this, but this looks fun. It's something
Yeah.
that look, coming from who it used to be one person to now it's stretched out to a much bigger team.
Yeah.
It looks like it's getting a bit of traction.
The
It
art
looks like it looks
the
fun.
art design is very Final Fantasy inspired,
It is, yeah.
but
It's also very Devil May Cry inspired.
oh yeah, the gameplay though looks Devil May Cry. Looks like
Oh, it's
Devil May.
inspired by Final Fantasy 15. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Why the main character looks like Noctis, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah, this came out
the
of nowhere. It
gameplay
looks
looks
great.
more like Devil May Cry.
Mm. Yeah, no, dude, this just looks fun. It
Yeah.
looks really fun. Like it looks like it's gonna have like these really big epic boss fights. So I thought it was worth mentioning. If you guys haven't, like, look up the footage. The game is called Lost Soul
Yeah.
Aside. You let us know what you guys think about it in the comment section.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right
I
now. It
think it's
looks
quite
very
fun.
cool. Looks cool. Very
And
good.
then, last but not least, I have a bunch of really, really small, short things. I labeled them miscellaneous because I thought some of them are funny. You know what I mean? This one, which is so weird, the old school NES Tetris game, like players have just found a new technique on how to like beat old school records for the old school NES. Like they just found a new way to play the game, and I don't know how it works, but the technique is called rolling. I tried watching a YouTube video on this, and I still couldn't really understand it. But supposedly it's quicker than the button mashing technique that they used to use. Apparently, I don't know. So it's just crazy, man. Like a game this old, they just found a new technique to beat high scores, to like beat times from like way back when. It's also like, look, the Tetris, competitive Tetris scene is huge, which most people don't know about. And they've been it's the competitive Tetris scene is not the new Tetris. It always has been the classic Tetris. It's just crazy that someone found a new technique now. This is also silly, dude. There's a Nintendo Wii made out of pure gold that was made for was a queen, yeah, Queen Elizabeth II, and it cost $300,000, dude. It's on sale on eBay right now for 300,000, and it's like it doesn't even look. It's got scratches on it, man. Like, yo, she obviously played that crap out of this Wii because this Wii is smashed. Like you can see she rage quitted. She must have thrown this golden controller around because I can see scratches on it and shit like that.
Yeah.
But of course, the Queen got a pure gold Nintendo Wii.
I'm pretty sure she never touched that thing
Well, someone
in
must
her
have,
life.
because there's definitely
Probably
some
the
scratches on it.
kids. Probably the kids.
Yeah, probably. Oh, definitely the kids. Somebody in the house did. You know?
Yeah, I'm sure
But
it's the
that's
kids.
crazy, dude. $300,000. That's the asking price. Apparently, people are saying that that's a reasonable price. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if it's solid gold, then that would make sense to me. And I suppose the fact that it was, you know, the Queen. It was the Queen. It was Queen Elizabeth II. It's like that's kind of crazy as is. This bit of news you might enjoy, which is that Titanfall 2, the player count has skyrocketed.
Yeah, so
And I actually got wind of this a while ago, and I still don't know. I need to like do a bit of research as to why it happened, but I was messaged on Discord from a friend who said, "Hey, listen, we're gonna bomb. We're all going to play Titanfall. Like everyone, we're trying to overload. I think they were trying to overload the Titanfall servers in a way to show like their support. I think I could be wrong on it. I haven't even read this article. I knew about it before the time, but yeah, the player base, it just skyrocketed. I think it's to try to show their support. I'm not too sure. Yeah, 4 years after the game's original release, it's got more players now. Titanfall's previous peak was 13,000, and currently now on Sunday it hit 16,000, which is so it's higher than it has ever been before with Titanfall 2 on Steam. So hey, servers are alive. If you guys own Titanfall 2, it seems like the servers are up and running, man. Go play some games. It's got more players now than ever before. I still don't really know where this kind of came from. I need to do a bit of research on that, but I still, like I said, I was invited to it. Everyone was like, "Hey, help us bomb the servers." I'm pretty sure. I think it wasn't an attempt to get them to be like, "Hey, give us a Titanfall 3," because I think people really, really want a Titanfall 3.
I really want a Titanfall 3. I just,
like 16,000 other people do too, Dennis. That's why they're playing the game.
But remember,
right
Respawn is working on a brand new IP, so
they just won't have the time, unfortunately, especially with Apex. Like I said,
well, that's the thing is Apex is making them the money, So
and they gotta stay.
What I would love to see that's another one. You can play Titanfall 1 and 2 on Game Pass as well.
Oh, it was, yeah, it was because people wanted Titanfall 3. That's why it happened.
Yeah,
and then
sense.
This is also for you. Fallout 76 Locked and Loaded update is live, and it includes several heavily requested additions.
I need to. I think I might have to install on my PC and start over. Are you playing that? You're not playing the game at all, are you?
No, but I will if you will. Like I said, it's on Game Pass for PC, so
okay.
I will if you. I just recently cleared up a huge chunk of space because I deleted Arc, which was like 160 gigs because I had all the expansions.
Mm-hmm.
So that I just cleared up a whole bunch of space on my SSD, and I think Fallout 76. Last time I checked, it was about 76 gigs around there. At least the PC version.
It's a lot better than when I first started playing it. And I put a good amount of time in it. I put a good amount of time in the once they released the Wastelanders, but now they probably have a lot more stuff in there now. So I may.
So I haven't played it, so you got to let me know what this means. And apparently, people are really happy with these changes. Like, punch card machines can be built in camp or found around the multiple train stations.
Punch card?
Yeah, I don't know what a punch card machine is, but apparently that's what people asked for. Players can store a maximum of 2 special loadouts per character, which is something that got asked for as well. What's this? Beginning at level 20. Yeah, beginning at level 25, players can create and save custom special point allocations, i.e., loadouts. So you can have different loadouts instead of just having your character. For those who don't know about Fallout, special is basically the dividing of your attribute points.
Yeah,
it's just a nice way of saying attribute points. So they're saying you can now have different loadouts for attribute points. Like if rather than having different characters, you can just have a different loadout. If you have a strength build, you can now have an agility build. You know what I mean? Which I'm not too sure what the use of that is in the game because I haven't played it enough. But the fact that a lot of people have asked for it must mean that it must be worth it. Rather than creating multiple characters or something, I suppose. Oh, and perk card assignments. So you can switch between your special point. You can switch between your attribute points and your perk cards. Yeah, that was apparently one of the most common requests. Yeah, special loadouts enable players to, which seems cool. The game looks great. I definitely want to try getting back into it at some point in time. There's a new update out. You know what I mean? Today marks the start of Season 4. The Season 4 is called Armor Ace in Cold Steel. Interesting name, but yeah. Last bit of news that I have here is not too interesting, but it's look, first of all, Metro Exodus, great game. If you own Metro Exodus, you're going to get a free update because they're releasing the Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, but apparently it is really resource heavy, if you own, it's not too bad. Well, we can run it first of all. The minimum requirements is our graphics card. So we have our graphics card is the minimum requirement, Dennis. Which let's keep in mind. We don't have. That says something.
Pretty steep. That's pretty steep. That's pretty
steep. The recommended graphics card would be an RTX 2070 or RTX 3060.
Jeez.
So That's the recommended. And if you want to play the game on high, it has to be an RTX 3070 with like CPU 8 cores, at least 16 gigs of RAM, DirectX 12. You'll get your ray tracing settings and stuff, but on the minimum requirements, you still have ray tracing supposedly. But you're only gonna get 45 FPS on minimum. So if we play the game, we're only gonna get 45 FPS, Dennis. 8 gigs of RAM minimum, which I'm sure you've got more. I've got 16. I do need more.
Yeah, I have 24.
Google Chrome needs 8 gigs on its own, man.
Yeah, I don't use Google Chrome for that reason. I use Edge because Chrome is a memory hog.
Man, I suppose I should switch, man. I really should, because that's like.
Well, you should you can use Edge now because they use the Chrome. It's based off Chromium, so.
Oh, sick. Okay, yeah. But yeah, the recommended settings. If you want to play Metro Exodus, the enhanced edition, if you want to play it on 1080p at 60 FPS, it comes with the ray tracing settings. Ray tracing settings will be on high. You need to have at least an 8-core CPU, at least 8 gigs of RAM. It seems like 8 gigs of RAM is the minimum for anything, but most PC gamers have more than 8 gigs of RAM nowadays. Most PC like systems come base with like 16 gigs of RAM. You know what I mean? But to be able to play it on recommended, you need an RTX 2070 or better, that's crazy, man. I can't. The game's probably going to look stunning. The game's probably going to look great, but I'm not going to play it. I don't want to play it at 45 frames per second.
It's hilarious because back in the day, like 30 was acceptable. Now people don't want to play anything unless it's 60.
I actually had that talk the other day. People were like people. It's funny because people now complain, especially with PC gamers. They complain if they don't get 120 frames per second. They don't care about 60 FPS. Like, no. They're like, are you kidding me? It's not 120 FPS. That's bullshit. Like, they're like, oh, I'm getting like 100. I'm getting like 160 FPS. People are complaining. It's like, look, man, 60 FPS is still fine. All right. Yeah. We used to play Game Boy games. All right. We used to play games that were like I want to say like 15 FPS, man. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. Is that it?
That's it for me. Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks for watching this episode of the Revog Games Podcast. Make sure to subscribe. You can subscribe on youtube.com/Revog. We also finally got our audio podcast up. So if you're watching this and you want to listen to it or you want to switch off here and there, whatever, check that out. The link is in the description, or, if you're listening to the podcast, I'm assuming you found it that way as well. And you can follow me on Twitter @ThinkHero or Instagram Dennis.tzng. And Josh, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on Twitch at Josh_Toki, and that's TOKI.
Cool. And so until next time, we'll see you guys later.
See you later.